So why do the I am free notices work? They work for a number of reasons, and I've put the top 5 reasons they work on this slide. The very first thing that the notices do is rescind the use of the name, the surname of the citizenship. I want you to think about all of the contracts that exist right now between the citizen and other corporations. I want you to think about physical contracts and then what's called invisible contracts. So physical contracts are things like mortgages, loans, credit cards, yeah, things in the on the game of commerce on the monopoly board. Invisible contracts are things like legislation, the Road Traffic Act, the Financial Services and Markets Act, you know, the Immigration Acts, all the acts and statutes. They're invisible contracts, which the citizen is bound by because they've never been rebutted. They're presumed to have effect and force and power because they've never been rebutted. And because they've never been rebutted, they have been consented to. So the very first thing that the I am free notices do is to wipe the slate clean. All those contracts, whether they are actual contracts with a signature on them or whether they are invisible. And the I am free notices wipe that board, that slate clean, because they come clean. They say, I am not the name on the birth certificate. I am a living man or woman. This contract, whether it's mortgage, council tax, taxes, bounce back loans, anything, credit cards, anything you like. That contract is being fraudulently constructed because the name that was being used on that contract is not me. In fact, unbeknown to me, I impersonated the name on the contract. And therefore it's an impersonation fraud, and I've just realized it. So I'm wiping the slate clean by rescinding all of the use of that name. And that wipes out all of the contracts. There can be no contract enforced because all those contracts were formed in fraud. And if you look at the effect of fraud on contracts, it eviscerates the contract. So that's the very first thing the I am free notices do. The next thing the I am free notices do is rebut all of the presumptions. So people talk about, oh, I didn't consent to this, that, and the other. Well, you didn't need to consent to things for legislation to be effective. The Crown presumed that you consented to everything in the legislative book. So what you're going to do with your I am free notice is rebut all those presumptions. And if you rebut them because you're not the name on the birth certificate, none of those presumptions can take any effect. They've all been wiped out. The Bar, which is the British Accreditation Registry, presumes that you've accepted all the acts and statutes, and they're all contractually bound upon you. But if you've rebutted them all because you're not the name on the birth certificate, none of them apply. The next thing is that you're going to rescind the votes that you may or may not have given in the past. It's interesting, if you look at the voting card, you put a cross on the voting card, yeah? Now, why is that? It's because they want you to be a ward, an imbecile. You can't even write. You have to put a cross in the box because you can't write, can you? Because you're stupid as an incompetent ward and an imbecile who needs representation. So you're going to rescind all those votes to these idiotic politicians who never did anybody any good. And if you are a politician on this webinar, I urge you to have a good look in the mirror. And you're going to rescind all those votes because those votes made you a commoner. So they all get rescinded in your notices. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a declaration that you're not dead, that you are in fact alive. And you've come back from being presumed dead under the Sesquivet V Act of 1666 and 1707, where they presume you to be dead, you're making a declaration that you're not dead, that you're alive. And if you're alive, you can become the general executor of the decedent estate, which is the person, the citizenship. You're now taking up your rightful place as the general executor of the decedent estate, and only you can control what goes on with that decedent estate. Not the crown, not the court, not the police, not the government. No, you as the general executor. You can't really be a general executor if you're presumed dead, can you? So because you make your declaration, and you're not saying, please, sir, can I come back from being presumed dead? No, you are issuing a command because you're one of the people and you're above the government, you're above the crown, you're above the monarch. You don't need anyone's permission to serve your notices. You're serving them from a position of being one of the people, right at the top of that hierarchy of power. And you're not sending notices off saying, please, can you look at my notices? And I want you to do something with them, but it's, it's kind of okay if you don't. No, no, no. You're serving them as one of the people. You're making commands like you are the king or the queen, like you are the emperor or empress. That's what you're doing with your iron-free notices. And if you think of what you can do with them, you can void all those contracts, all that stuff on the commerce board, on the monopoly board. You can void your mortgages, your loans, your credit cards, taxes. You can void all the legislation. You can void even companies that you may have formed that you no longer want to keep running. You can void all of the contracts that are with other corporations and companies that you may have set up. So you may be thinking, well, how can you void a contract that's between another company and my company, or the one that I formed? That's because the company you formed was formed in fraud. Doesn't exist. Because the name that was used as the shareholder and director was put there in fraud. So you can wipe the whole board clean if you want, start again. And instead of getting rid of the citizenship, you control the citizenship as its general executor. And you now play the game of Monopoly the way you want to play it, not the way the crown or the state wants you to play it. So you do not get rid of that piece that moves around the Monopoly board. No, you just take control of it and remove the crown and the state from having control of it.